So time to get talking about our second issue this morning on the program. Nigeria, again, won't forget so much in a hurry all of the promises that had been made by this administration, starting from 2022 into the election proper, and of course, post-election. Whether you're talking about reforms in fiscal and monetary policies, or you're talking about reforms in agriculture. As a matter of fact, a little over a year ago, food security. Some emergency was declared on food security in this country, but we haven't seen much in that regard. As a matter of fact, it is a shame to note that even the government and those in it hardly even mention it as though it never happened. So when you look at this trajectory, you're asking yourself, what exactly is the policy thrusts of the Tinubu government, especially as it has to do with cost of living and the quality of life of the everyday Nigerian. I'm joined by Iman Ozomena, is public policy consultant, to help us find talking points in this all-important conversation. Thank you for coming on Global Morning.
Good morning.
All right, let's start with well, when you talk about policies, people say these are elitist discussions, but policies actually drive whatever will happen at the base at the end of the day. So let's assess this government on the basis of policy, whether it's formulation, articulation, or implementation. How does this government rank right now?
Clearly, I could say straight on that from the inception of the campaigns in 2023, we had a document delivered by the then presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress, which clearly encapsulated his what would be the driving philosophy for his administration should he win. The other candidates, whether it's Atiku Abubakar of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Peter Obi of the Labour Party, and all had policy documents, which in this day of digital age, they all put it up in the digital space, and citizens had access to them. Citizens went through them, digested them, interrogated them. And the team of the President Bola Tinubu's policy trust is the Renewed Hope, the Renewed Hope agenda. And that's a very ambitious philosophy, very ambitious agenda. And Nigerians were, when he won the election or declared the winner, everybody looked forward to that renewed hope. And but I think where the president would have mixed it was perhaps the comment or the remark on the inauguration day that subsidy is over. Because the inauguration speeches of any presidency defines it. Over 60 years after, the former United States President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, said, do not ask for what your country will do for you, but what you can do for your country. That was a tagline contained in his inaugural address when he was inaugurated in January 1960. He won the election in 1959, but was inaugurated in January 1960. Until today, it's become some sort of a tagline politicians have used across the world. So usually that inaugural speech remarks or address provides a window into what an administration will look like. And the reaction of the market to that remark by Mr. President reset the economy. So by the time the administration was settling down to begin to crunch the data, drill down on various things they intend to do, this other event, unintended event, if you may, had taken over the entire system. And that's where we are.
Incidentally, the presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party in the 2023 election, Prince Adebayo, himself a lawyer, politician, and businessman, someone who has a robust understanding of how economies around the world work, now says that this government did not articulate properly, did not think through what they were going to do upon assumption of office. And he says the government is only looking at everything from the standpoint of business, not on how it can positively impact the lives of citizens. What exactly is the broken link right here when you look at the Bola Tinubu government and the quality of life of Nigerians today?
Incidentally, Prince Adebayo's manifesto, I had it because it was on his on the SDP website. I also went through it. But usually what I do during the electoral campaigns, I try to assess the policy trust of the candidates running, especially the major ones. What it does to me, it gives me some sort of a heads up on what to expect, however the election goes. I think I read his, I've listened to him several times. I've also read his writings and interviews. Perhaps he thinks, he may be talking about, their party is Social Democratic Party, so invariably you know where they should be coming from the point of view of...
Socialism?
No, trying to build a balance between business and the social responsibility of government.
Right.
Government has a responsibility for business and also social and welfare responsibilities. Because if you throw everything to business, you might have a big problem. I think it may not necessarily be around the issue of articulation of ideas for the Bola Tinubu administration. It could be perhaps, like there's something, a good example would be this, in the development sector. That's what they usually call piloting, pilot programs. Pilot programs are, you intend to irrigate 100,000 hectares of farmlands across 5 communities in a particular state with the intention of poverty reduction. You might say, okay, let's do 10 hectares first. Let's irrigate 10 hectares and see how much buy-in we can get from the local farmers who might be, for instance, who may not have the full knowledge, adequate knowledge of irrigation technology you're trying to introduce, who may need to learn through one season, because there's also the process of there's a learning curve for every policy you want to introduce. Perhaps instead of a wholesale removal of subsidy, I mean, subsidy is gone, subsidy is over. It could have been, okay, let's sit down, interrogate the challenges of subsidy. Okay, we give subsidy at the point where you are going to purchase fuel. Why don't we rethink the subsidy and pilot a particular brand of subsidy. You could take 4 independent marketers and say, let's pilot a program here. Let me give you an instance. Some years ago, I worked for a project where I was trying to tackle the issue of fertilizer supply in Nigeria. The challenge with subsidy in fertilizer is that it does not get to the real farmers. So we thought through a process of coupon where you have a coupon system where the person who is taking it, the farmer, first you have a database of farmers who should access the fertilizer, and at each point in time, you're ticking off the numbers of who has gotten and who hasn't got, so that, I think at a point, the program got to a point where they had to employ technology. I was under Dr. Adeshina as the Minister of
Agriculture.
Of Agriculture.
Under former President Jonathan.
So, and the moment, because in fact, I had listened to Adebayo speak at public events. He talked about doing his PhD thesis, dissertation, on fertilizer supply in Nigeria. And I gave him some sort of insight. So when he worked for AGRA, AGRA is an alliance for agriculture, Alliance for Agricultural Alliance in Africa. Because it came from AGRA to become the minister. He was a vice president for partnership to become the Minister of Agriculture in Nigeria.
That's additional.
Additional. So what I think should happen, or should have happened, should have been you pilot policies, take lessons learned, and then know how to move to the next, cascade it to the next level, instead of whole-scale, full-scale implementation. Because if a policy goes wrong or there's any unintended consequences, pulling back becomes a problem because there's already a whole-scale, investment.
I want us to expand this real quick, Iman. The Tinubu government now says that, well, we know this is biting real hard. We know times are very tough for Nigerians. We are not ignorant of all of these realities. However, what you've got to do is to understand that this is what we must do to get to that bright future that we all yearn for, that we all crave. However, Prince Adebayo, again, I circle back to him, says economics is about alternatives and choices and options. Therefore, he says, based on his own assessment, this government is not doing a thorough thinking about how this economy should work. Is that your position?
Like in life, there's nothing that don't have an alternative. Some years ago, I listened to the late Ikemba of Nnewi, Chief Emeka Onwegwu. I think that was in 1987. He delivered a paper at Nigerian Society of Engineers, their annual conference, annual lecture at Onitsha, Holy Trinity Cathedral Hall in Onitsha in 1987. Ojukwu said, look, he was speaking directly to there was a debate around SAP, Structural Adjustment Program. He said he disagrees with the government that there are no alternative to SAP, because that was the then tagline under President Ibrahim Babangida, that there's no alternative to SAP. I mean, every Nigerian who was born in the 80s should have heard that, no alternative to SAP. Ojukwu said no, that there's nothing in life that doesn't have an alternative. He said even death has an alternative. And an alternative to death is to live. So, because life is about opposites. Incidentally, I read philosophy. So, one of the things that defines reality and life is opposites. Right, wrong, front, back, black, white. So you must have for everything like there are alternatives.
But we have better alternatives than what the government is pursuing right now.
The alternative could be simply this. Let's take United States, for instance. At the moment, if you check the energy pricing within the United States, the cost of energy went up for one particular global incident, the war in Ukraine.
Right.
In Europe, cost of energy has gone up. The European economy is largely serviced by gas from Ukraine and Russia. Because of this war, most countries in Europe, I think apart from Germany and France, say, look, we are not going to have trade sanctions against Russia because we need their oil. They are close. We can pipe the gas to our country. During winter, the cost of gas is high. You need more gas because you need to heat up the houses and all that. If you don't do that, old people are likely going to die.
Right, so you need to make that tough decision.
That decision has to be made. Do you want old people to die or do you want to provide support for them? So across Europe, UK, France, Germany, you have energy subsidy. In fact, in the UK, a few weeks ago, the UK Prime Minister Starmer said, look, we are cancelling the gas subsidy to retirees, to senior citizens. And they went to their party convention. They said, no, this can't happen. It means we're going to lose our senior citizens. They put pressure on the Prime Minister. In the US, you also have all kinds of subsidies being provided. Meanwhile, US, as it were, is the world capital of capitalism. In this election, the 2024 presidential election, you see Kamala Harris putting up all kinds of welfare programs, social programs that impact on the poor. And you see Trump, the Republican Party, that is known as the party of the neoliberal economy, also putting out their own policy agenda that all geared towards the welfare of their American people. So what it means is that even though the government talks about palliatives, what has been the major challenge is implementation processes. So can they rethink this palliative process? But I also agree with Adebayo that, look, there are no policies that do not have alternatives. But again, one of the things I think he should do, being an opposition leader, because the SDP, as it were, is an opposition.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Is to provide policy alternative. Keep pushing. Because that's what we expect from him. But by and large, there's no policy, no process, no idea that do not have an alternative.
Interesting. When you look at Nigeria's economic structure today, people say, well, we are running a capitalist economy. Others say, no, it's not exactly that. It's a sort of a hybrid of whatever it is. Then you find others who say, well, it's a voodoo economy model. What exactly describes or best describes the kind of economy model we're following?
Essentially, Nigeria is not a capitalist economy. That's my honest position. If you have capitalists in a capitalist economy, you have more philanthropy. In the US, for instance, there are perhaps over 500,000 philanthropists in the US as you speak. That's a capitalist economy. Let's look at the media, for instance. Who owns Fox News, Sky News? Murdoch, a capitalist, a rich man. Do we have such in Nigeria? Who owns Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? Who owns MacArthur, John and Catherine D. MacArthur Foundation. So it shows you that we don't have, there are no local philanthropies.
So how do we then
so that describes, that takes Nigeria off a capitalist
how do we then describe things like the Dangote Foundation, Tony Elumelu Foundation?
How many of them? How many of them?
So it's about the numbers.
As we speak at the moment, China, the US has the highest number of billionaires, followed by China.
Right.
I read an analysis on the UK by one of the Labour Party spokesperson saying that before Conservative Party took over in 2010 from Tony Blair, remember David Cameron defeated Tony Blair.
Right.
They had less than 30 billionaires or thereabout in the UK. That today they have 95 billionaires. But he was talking about how the Conservative Party has created some sort of processes that aided some people to become overrich against the poor. So that's for the UK. So if you're talking about billionaires list, is the US, China, and how did China get there? Remember, China was a closed economy until they opened up and started reforming their processes. It's not yet an full open process, but they have been able to demonstrate some level of competencies across the world at the moment. Chinese firms are leading in infrastructure, whether it's rail, whether it's road. You have Chinese firms everywhere. Chinese firms are building infrastructure even in the United States. Rail projects. So Nigeria, if you ask me to say, would I call it a hybrid? I don't even think it's a hybrid. Because if it's a hybrid, then you would have had a robust social safety net. But it doesn't exist. Take, for instance, one of the things I have asked, you want to do social intervention programs. How do you generate your list?
Data.
The data generation. Let's go back a bit to the Buhari administration. In 2015, during the campaigns, it was clear, I mean, you could see it on their campaign tagline, we're going to pay unemployment allowance to the youths. In fact, they mentioned 5,000 naira or so. And when the administration came on board, I heard the former Minister of Labor and Productivity, Dr. Chris Ngige, responding, I think at a public event where they asked him, we have not seen you have not rolled out the program on unemployment allowance. He responded that we don't have data. And that was a sincere response. But again, who should generate such data? Should it come from me, a private citizen, or should it come from an institution that is paid? Because you have all kinds of government MDAs who are, is their remit to provide this data, to source for it, and to develop it. It's their remit, right. Not the remit of an external agency like the World Bank or whatever, or UNICEF, like we've been told. It's the responsibility. And how do you generate this data? Take, for instance, in the US, you have social insurance or social security number.
Your SSN.
So at birth, every citizen has that social security number. So what it means is the national database becomes the social security number and provides support to every other sector within the US, whether it's the labor department, agricultural department, up to the county level. So that at every point in time, an American who is unemployed, who should be on welfare, and an American who is disabled, who needs support. The data are there. So how is it that we're unable to have such robust data that could serve multiple purposes? And each time you ask the palliatives, who does it go to? Is it party members? Is it the list of members of parties, political parties? What if I'm not a member of any political party? So it means if I'm in a community, I won't get it. So the entire ecosystem needs to be reset for us to get the desired results.
You talked about palliatives. You've also mentioned social safety nets. We've seen the government take loans here and there from the IMF, from the World Bank in particular, again and again. We understand there's a $500 million in the works, which will, all else equal, manifest sometime in 2025. How do we marry real-time value, if you like, concrete development across critical sectors with all of these monies we are borrowing, or is it just borrowing for the sake of it?
Well, depending on maybe the loans you're talking about or the particular credit from...
Some to support the power sector, others for education, then you have those for health. These are critical sectors, no doubt.
My challenge with the loans are simply this. Each loan we take should be targeted at real investments. If we are taking a loan for power sector, for instance, we should be clear about what aspect of power sector are we talking about? What do we intend to do? What mileage do we intend to? What are the milestones we intend to see happen?
We need to take a quick break so that we can come talk about mileage shortly. Do stay with us, everyone. All right, so in 3 minutes, let's just talk about these milestones, or, I mean, whatever the yardsticks are that you were talking about a while ago.
Just quickly, if, for instance, maternal mortality, the first thing to do is to undertake needs assessment.
Right.
So where do we have high prevalence of maternal mortality? What regions of the country? What demography in terms of age group? What particular location? What is the number one to drive down by the time we are through with this, implementing this program, in terms of having, so that we can have real impact? Well, so every project, every loan should be for an impactful investment.
It's very interesting because every time we talk about these issues of loan, it becomes a bit of a complicated discussion to have because of the culture of borrowing that we have had over time. Because as you already know, so I guess former minister in this country, Kemi Adeosun, Minister of Finance, as she then was, had told us that in 2016, this was Nigeria dealing with recession, that the country will borrow for the foreseeable future. And it will appear 8 years down the line, the lady wasn't wrong after all, because we see the borrowing spree continue unabated. So the question is, how do we create value in the face of all of this borrowing that we're doing, or begin to review whether or not we should even borrow in the first instance? We understand that several tranches of World Bank loan have been secured the last, even in the life of this administration. Let's not talk about the last 8 years of former President Muhammadu Buhari. But in all of this, in the final analysis, Nigerians want to be able to see how these loans impact their lives in ways that are positive and remarkably measurable. That's our program for you today. Thank you, everyone, for watching. On behalf of the entire production team, I am Michael, Anchor, Queen Agaba. We're so grateful for the time you have invested with us, the views of our guests, their opinions. You've been watching Global Morning. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies to
For sure. Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle with ASU strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.